looks good.
Perfect. Alrighty.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everyone in person and on Zoom. My name is Griffin Peck, and I'm the Sustainability Project Coordinator for the City of Morris, and I also help coordinate the Morris Model. And today I'll be talking about what the Morris Model is and how it provides a model for communities to do sustainable development in Greater Minnesota. So just a brief agenda of what we'll be talking about. So first I'll do a little bit of an overview of what the Morris Model is. Then we'll talk about some of the initial projects that got the partnership off the ground. Then we'll discuss our first strategic plan, which was completed in 2018. Then we'll move into a number of projects that we completed between 2018 and this year. And then we'll move finally into the strategic plan 2.0 that we completed last fall. And then we'll wrap up and have time for questions. So first of all, what is the Morris Model? So it's an umbrella community partnership that works on clean energy and energy efficient projects together. And so the partnership consists of partners like the city, the University of Minnesota Morris, the University of Minnesota West Central Research and Outreach Center, which is a research farm, Stevens County, and then the West Central Minnesota Climate Network, and others. And our goal is to advance a vision of a rural model sustainable community. And so each of our partner organizations implements projects and goals, or like goals in their own areas. And then we work to model that for the wider community. Yeah, we also have some larger goals for the overall community as well, that we work with residents and businesses on as well. So some of the initial kind of beginnings, the partnership was first conceived around 2010, 2011. But one of the first projects that happened was the city partnering with the university to install LED lighting on Main Street. And so Atlantic Avenue is the main street that runs through Morris, has 2 stoplights on it, it has the McDonald's on it, all the stuff you want. And the city they owned the lighting on that street and they wanted to upgrade it to LED lighting. And the utility was kind of iffy on whether or not they wanted to do this. This was back in 2014. And so the city reached out to the university because they had experience with LED lighting. And they worked together to install a project and it helped the city save 50,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is approximately, the average home uses 10,000 kilowatt hours a year. It's the energy of 5 homes just from a lighting retrofit. So the city was like, oh, well, maybe we can do more of this to save more energy and save more money. And so then kind of the next thing that happened was they did an LED lighting retrofit of the entire city. So the entire city's operations, from all of its indoor lighting and all of its outdoor lighting, was transitioned onto LEDs. It was about $260,000, I believe. But that happened in 2015 and the retrofit was paid off last year. And it saved the city an additional 257,000 kilowatt hours every year. And so it was a significant, savings in electricity and obviously a significant money savings. And that's one of the things that will be a common thread throughout my presentation is the money piece. That's the piece that's the most important when working on sustainability in Greater Minnesota, because that's what motivates people. Some other projects that were done kind of early on was this Evergreen Energy district heating study. And so the University of Minnesota Morris campus has a district heating plant and they use steam and hot water to heat the campus. But the boilers on the campus are relatively oversized. And so there was enough additional capacity for them to tie in the elementary and high school and the hospital onto a district heating system. And so they worked with Evergreen Energy to do an in-depth study. And they found that it was a really good thing and it would save them a lot of money. And then the school's boiler failed and they had to replace it like last minute. And so it didn't end up going anywhere, but it was a really cool opportunity for collaboration between a hospital, a university, and a school district. And then over the years, we've partnered on a number of interns and Green Corps members. And so this is one of the other keys to success, is working with students and German interns and Green Corps members to work on a lot of the aspirations we have. Later today, I'll be giving another presentation across the hall, talking more about some of the issues that Greater Minnesota cities face when working on sustainability projects. And one of the biggest issues is the capacity issue. And so interns and Green Corps members can really fill that niche. And especially our German J1 interns that we've had, most of them are engineering students. And, I like to think I know a lot about energy and stuff, but I do have just a plain Bachelor of Arts degree. And so it's helpful to have someone who's studying, engineering come in and do more in-depth studies of stuff that I don't even necessarily have the capacity for. So from there, in 2018, we completed a strategic plan. And so they decided to do a 2-day retreat at Camp Ripley. And so they rounded up 35 local leaders and stakeholders and brought them up to Camp Ripley and had a facilitated strategic planning session with the Clean Energy Resource Teams, West Central Initiative, and the Minnesota State Office of Enterprise Sustainability. And from that, they developed these big 3 goals for the community, which were to produce 80% of the energy we consume from renewables in the county by 2030, to reduce our energy consumption by 30% by 2030, and to end landfilling of waste within the county by 2025. And then we also produced this list of 100 big projects to, we asked the participants to think, what are the most aspirational projects you could imagine for our community? And then we documented that in a list of 100 projects. And as you'll see in a second, it really paid off in a big way. So this is a look at a number of different projects that we've completed between 2018 and 2024. And I will go through them for you. So first, they hired this sustainability coordinator position, right? And so the University of Minnesota Morris Director of Sustainability, Troy Goodnow, worked with the city of Morris to write an LCCMR grant to hire this position. The LCCMR is the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, and it appropriates money from the Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is funded through the Minnesota Lottery. And the funds can support projects across a number of areas. And so, invasive species removals, to sustainability coordinators, to environmental education, to habitat, and even recreation. I've heard that they fund bike paths and stuff. And so it's a really unique funding mechanism that has been really good at funding a position like this. And so far we've had 2 grants for this position, 2 LCCMR grants. The first one was focusing on modeling energy and environmental roadmaps for Minnesota communities. And our second one is focused on inventorying greenhouse gas emissions for the city operations, as well as community as well. And then working to implement policy and goals to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. In 2019, the county received a grant to hire a solid waste coordinator for the first time. The coordinator is the University of Minnesota Morris graduate, Sydney Bauer, and they worked with the county to research composting programs in Minnesota, and then they collaborated with the Pope Douglas Solid Waste Management team to prepare materials and launch the program in Morris. And so over 500 residential composting kits were given out across the community. And then 5 community drop sites were installed, which is what's on the bottom right there. And then SID also launched composting at the Morris area schools, in their cafeterias, at the St. Mary's School, which is our private Christian school, and then at several restaurants and businesses locally. And so restaurants, businesses, and the school district and the university all get daily compost pickups. And then for the rest of the community, for people who are doing composting in their house, we have these drop sites that were installed where it's just concrete pad, a couple bins in a fenced off area. And you can just go and drop your compost bags there. And what's unique about our composting program is that it accepts a wider range of organic waste. And so pizza boxes and paper towels and meat and bones and all, we can accept really a really wide thing of organics because we have this industrial composting facility in Pope, in Douglas County. And this facility was also constructed with state funding, and it uses a state-of-the-art system from Japan or something that has probes in the soil so they can track the gas emissions and they can track the other things from it. And then they have ways of turning it over and sorting it. And yeah, so we've been sending compost there for a couple of years now. And one of the big things with that is that the composting facility is our closest waste disposal location for Morris. So the landfill that we send our waste to is about 250 miles away. And so half the waste goes to a landfill in our county. The other half of the waste goes to a waste to energy incinerator in Alexandria, but that's still 45 minutes away. And so, if you think about it like that, if we know that roughly 40% of our MSW is organic, we could significantly reduce the amount of trash we're sending to both the landfill and to the incinerator. We can make our incinerator waste much higher quality because it's going to be drier, and then we can reduce the amount of waste that we're sending to the MSW landfill in North Dakota. Currently, we send 2 60-foot trucks of trash per day. So that's several thousand miles of driving per year in these 60-foot trucks. And so even if we were able to reduce it to 1 truck per day by cutting out the organics from our waste stream, that would have huge emission savings and cost savings for our community. I also worked on this energy and environmental education pathway. And so we took inspiration from our sister city of Sarbac. And so we're a part of the Climate Smart Municipalities Partnership through the Institute on the Environment. I believe St. James is also a part of it, if I'm not mistaken. And so our sister city of Sarbac has the amount of energy that their public buildings use posted on the outside of all of their buildings as like a energy literacy pathway. And so we wanted to take inspiration from that and do something similar in Morris, but we wanted to also expand it to focus on like larger themes of sustainability. So not just talking about energy, but also talking about like social and economic sustainability and giving examples of that. And so 10 signs were installed along about a 3rd-mile route in the central business district. And so they were installed on city buildings and then also on local businesses. And they highlight different aspects. And so this photo is of the House Majority Whip, Athena Hollins, Senator Rob Kupek from Moorhead, and Senator George Rasmussen from Berks Falls, and Savita Engel and Christoph Etter from the CSM partnership. We were just doing a little tour of this pathway. But yeah, so there's signs on our city buildings that talk about energy use, but then there's a sign on our local food co-op that talks about the importance of having a local food co-op and having a farmer's market locally. We have a sign on our movie theater, which is also a cooperative. And so a number of years ago, our movie theater was going to close. Community said, we don't want to lose this asset. And so they came together and bought it. And now it's run as a cooperative. And right, it shows like first run movies in rural Minnesota in a town of 5,000. Like that's not common. I've come to find out as I've lived in rural Minnesota. And so like, that's a really cool example of a community coming together to keep an asset in their community that they know will help their community sustain, right? So one of the big things I like talking about is in sustainability, I'm not talking about just green energy or just energy efficiency. What I'm talking about is how do we make sure our rural communities are able to sustain themselves for the next 100 years. That's the biggest fight that rural communities are thinking of, is how do we maintain our population? How do we grow our population? And so I think sustainability specifically is one of the ways to really apply that idea of sustaining the community in a more literal way, right? If everybody's needs are being met in a community, whether it's social, environmental, economic, that makes them want to stay there more. And if their needs aren't being met in that way, then they're going to move away. And so that's one of the things I try and emphasize both in the pathway and in my work is that sustainability isn't just, a clean energy thing or energy efficiency. It really is a model for how we can revitalize our rural communities. EV Smart City is a cool program with the Great Plains Institute, basically helping the city of Morris consider the electric vehicle transition and to prepare us for it. And so under this program, I developed an EVSE or EV supply equipment use ordinance that defines which types of businesses will be required to install EV charging and how it needs to be installed and at what levels it needs to be installed, and then also sets requirements for multifamily housing to also offer EV charging, and then also sets the zoning for EV technology. So, for us, that means allowing level 1 and level 2 charging as an accessory use in all zoning districts, making it as easy as possible for people to get that lower rate of charging, and then zoning level 3 or DC fast chargers basically the same as fueling stations. And so they're not going to be in single family residential, even in multifamily residential. They're going to be in more populated areas where it makes sense to have, you know, a charger that's going to get a lot of use throughout the day, rather than in like, you know, you wouldn't want 30 Teslas coming into your neighborhood every day to charge on a supercharger that's just like in someone's like driveway, right? Like that wouldn't be super nice. And so thinking about that and zoning that so that also when different EV companies come into our town and want to develop chargers, then we already have something on the books that governs that development. Whereas other cities who don't have these ordinances, when an EV company comes in, they don't have requirements, they don't have design requirements. And so that's where you get chargers that are broken, or chargers that don't have adequate lighting, or chargers that don't have proper like cord management equipment. And so this is also helping us make sure that when EV chargers are developed in our community, that things are going to be done right, and they're going to be done right the first time. And then finally, this Energy and Environmental Roadmap for Minnesota Communities was a report from the first LCCMR grant that this position had. And essentially it's just documenting the process we go through in Morris. So that's creating and affirming community partnership, benchmarking our energy resources to understand where we're at and where we've been, then coming together to do community visioning in the form of strategic planning, and then implementing those plans in the form of sustainability and resiliency projects, and then doing community outreach and education. And ideally, this is really a circle, right? And so you go through that process and you implement all these projects, and then you do education, and then you go back and reaffirm community partnership and make it larger.